We have a little bit of everything to discuss today, including some trade rumors, some free agent rumors, some injury updates, as well as some signings. We'll jump into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a lot of different types of news to talk about here today. Now, first up, we have some injury updates. Chicago Blackhawks youngster Kirby Dach, who went to the World Junior Championships to represent his country of Canada, became captain, was going to be a huge part of that team. Of course, we know that he got hurt in their one and only exhibition game leading into the tournament. We've now found out the extent of the injury. He did have to have a surgery on his fractured wrist, and he's going to be out of action for about 4 to 5 months. So that pretty much will end his season. Obviously, as we know, the season's starting January 13th. Regular season will be done by middle of May. So I guess if Chicago were able to make the playoffs, it is possible he could maybe return for that. But even the start of the playoffs wouldn't necessarily be a guarantee unless he was a little bit of ahead of schedule. It just kind of depends on how the recovery process is going. So as we know, the Hawks are in a bit of a rebuilding mode. I would say their odds of making the playoffs, I mean, it is possible, but it's not going to be any easy task. By no means a guarantee. So his season very well could be completely over. So it's very unfortunate. I know they were looking forward to him taking another huge step forward with his development. It was going to be a great experience for him. I know he lobbied pretty hard with the Blackhawks organization to let him go to that tournament, and he was going to do great things there, and I think he really would have if this would not have happened. So unfortunate incident there. Another situation too regarding an injury update would be Henrik Lundqvist. Of course, as we know, the longtime goaltender signed with the Capitals, and then later found out that he was not going to be able to play due to a heart issue. Now, we did get more details on that as well. We had clarification as well from comments here regarding Lundqvist that he's actually dealt with a heart issue for some time, but it's never been problematic enough for him to really miss time or have to have any kind of surgeries or any procedures or anything of that nature. But he did announce today that he's actually going to require open heart surgery to correct the problem that he's been experiencing. So obviously that's a major surgery. So he'll definitely, he already said he'd be out for the season. There's no doubt after recovering from that he would be for sure. So I just want to wish him a speedy recovery, and hopefully everything goes well, and hopefully he can get back to playing. It sounds like he would like to resume playing, but really, I think the odds of him making it back after this big surgery is probably slim. I would think his career is probably over at the stage of his where he's at in his life, and after going through that. But I guess we will see once he has his procedure. We'll see how things go and see if he still has the ability to make a return or not. But our thoughts are certainly with him as he goes through this big procedure here. Now on to some signings for today. We had a few of these, including some professional tryouts as well. We had Andreas Athanasiou, probably the most significant signing today besides Corey Perry, who we already discussed earlier in a prior video, signing with the Montreal Canadiens. Athanasiou signs with the Los Angeles Kings on a one-year deal at $1.2 million. So based on what other guys have been getting, that's not too bad for a contract. We did hear comments from the Kings organization here in the past few weeks kind of indicating that their rebuild's over. There's no reason why they can't go out and make other acquisitions to make this team better and more competitive right away. So they have a ton of prospects. They don't need to have another season where they finish low in the standings to kind of recoup those picks to keep building here. Although they still very well might. It's hard to say how well they'll do this year. It really depends on how much progress their young players tend to make. But the Kings signed Athanasiou. He's a very speedy winger who at one point scored 30 goals. His career has kind of got off the rails the last couple of years, but we'll see if he can rejuvenate and find himself in the Kings organization and have the ability to play with a lot of great young players there. So it could be a great thing for him to kind of get things going again. Now, as far as some other signings, we did hear the Calgary Flames have signed Garrett Sparks, but only to a PTO. So he'll go to Calgary Flames training camp. No guarantees on the contract. I would think if anything, he gets a two-way deal. The Flames already signed Jacob Markstrom. He'll be the main starting guy. Of course, you get David Rittich in play there as well. So he'll get a fair bit of play as the backup. And then they still have Louis Domingue too as the number 3. I would think that'll be the 1, 2, 3 order. They do have some other youngsters in the organization who really don't know yet if they're going to be able to play. They have Ty Parsons, who admittedly was an East Coast League goalie last year. You've got youngster Dustin Wolf, who's an American-born goalie right now in the World Juniors, but once the tournament's over, no clear-cut answer on where he's going to play. He's normally from the Western Hockey League, but there's no confirmed date on when they're going to be starting, so he could technically go to either an NHL or AHL team as well. So I'm not sure if Sparks is going to land himself a contract or not, but even if he does, I really don't see a scenario where they carry him as part of the NHL or taxi squad expanded rosters. If anything, he could be a good help to their American Hockey League team at most. We also seen the Carolina Hurricanes sign their first-round draft pick from the 2020 NHL Draft. Seth Jarvis of the Western Hockey League gets his entry-level deal. So a 3-year contract, pretty standard stuff, $925K. Really just a formality. A lot of these 2020 NHL Draft first-round picks have now been signed. There's still some out there that haven't, but Jarvis gets his deal with the Carolina Hurricanes. Be interesting again to see what they do with him. We'll probably see more players that are, normally would be staying in junior that very well could be part of teams' taxi squads or play in the AHL in some cases, since junior hockey is very, very questionable across Canada for the remainder of the current season. There is word that the Edmonton Oilers and defenseman Ethan Bear are getting closer in a contract, but still a little ways apart. It looks as though the Oilers have tabled multiple offers. They have a 1, 2, and a 3-year deal, according to reports, on the table for Bear to consider. But it looks as though money is more of the issue that they're not agreeing on here so far. But based on what we're hearing, it does sound like things are at least progressing in the right direction. And I know they really want to have him signed by the time they open training camp. So I would expect those negotiations and talks to kind of ramp up here over the next few days. Same goes with Matt Barzal and the New York Islanders organization. They're still really a fair bit apart, according to what we're hearing. At this point, Barzal is not close to signing, but they're still having a lot of open dialogue. We had heard that Barzal was returning to Long Island, so obviously if he's heading back and starting to get ready for camp, that does have positive signs that maybe they'll get something done here. But clearly the Islanders are a team that really need to look after that being their top offensive player. So we'll see. But right now things are not real close. But as we know, as we've heard many NHL insiders say, things can change quickly with one phone call and they can ramp up real fast. So we'll see what happens on the Barzal front. But certainly one of the bigger contracts left to get done, along with a guy like Dubois in Columbus. UFA centerman Derick Brassard seems to be heading to Arizona. No guarantee that happens, but the rumors are that likely as of tomorrow, he's expected to sign a 1-year contract with the Coyotes. There was some rumors that he was considering options from the Islanders, but the Islanders really can't do that just yet. They probably wanted him to wait, and he needs to get a contract and get to camp somewhere. Camps are short this year. There's no exhibition games, so a lot of these guys, if they can get a contract, they need to jump on it. Otherwise, they could find themselves waiting around, miss the start of the season, and that's usually not good for being able to be in game shape and jump in. And a lot of guys, when they have to start their seasons late like that, doesn't always work out. But it seems as though he has had talks with a variety of teams, but rumor has it he'll be signing with the Coyotes. We very well might be reporting on that being official sometime tomorrow. Now on to a couple other rumors I wanted to take a look at here. Now the Tampa Bay Lightning are a team I want to look at, as well as Montreal. Now in Tampa's case, you might be wondering how could they make any more moves, but really with the moves they made yesterday with the Ottawa Senators in that trade, they acquired 2 contracts from Anders Nilsson and Marian Gaborik, plus they have Nikita Kucherov, who they've already confirmed will be out for the entirety of the regular season. That gives them just shy of $17 million to put a long-term injury reserve. So when you move their roster down to 12 forwards, 6 defensemen, and a couple of goalies, you move the LTIR money up, they actually would have a little bit of wiggle room to add another player, and word is they would like to add another depth defenseman. Of course, they had a lot of defensemen, which we know is very important to winning a Stanley Cup and having a deep playoff run, but a lot of those defensemen have since had to depart because they could not afford to keep them around. So we saw guys like Bogosian and Shattenkirk are prime examples of guys that went to Tampa, kind of rejuvenated themselves, had pretty decent seasons, had strong playoff performances, and were able to get new contracts, and they had to move on and take more money to go elsewhere. So another situation could evolve with that, with Tampa doing the same sort of thing this year. Of course, they could go to the trade route, and they could also go the free agent route. Now, at this point, I'm not really sure we're going to see a trade involving a guy like a Tyler Johnson, an Alex Killorn, a Yanni Gourde, all those guys that were right at the top of the pecking order here as far as making a move. I know there were some that were talking about Paquette earlier being a prime trade candidate as well. And mostly he was included in that Senators trade. So we're probably not going to see any more moves from the forward group. That would be my guess if anything, they would make a small trade to add a defenseman, probably giving up some sort of a future asset, either a prospect or a draft pick, if they go that route, and pick up a defenseman that would be making somewhere around $1 million, 1.1, 1.2, something to that effect, because they're going to have probably, I think it's going to be probably just shy of 1.2 million would be what they would end up having available within that LTIR pool that they can max out here. So obviously, like I said, on a trade front, I'm not sure who they could target, but I know there was one defenseman they were linked to before, and we were all kind of saying that wouldn't be possible. How would they do that? It didn't make sense. But could they go after Bruins captain Zdeno Chara? Now, there's a lot of talk about what his future holds. It doesn't sound to me that it's a very high chance of him returning to the Boston Bruins organization. Now, you never say never, and it still, to me, would seem really weird to see him wearing any other uniform in the NHL. And as I've said, I'd still be surprised if it happened. But all the comments you hear from the Bruins organization kind of seems like they really would rather go a different route. So, obviously, there was previous link of Tampa wanting to sign Chara as a free agent. Of course, he's not the same kind of defenseman they brought in last year, and guys like Shattenkirk or Bogosian, guys who had previously played well but kind of needed a rejuvenation. Obviously, they were able to sign pretty cheap and, of course, rehabilitated them, helped them play better, and then sent them along their way to make more money elsewhere. In the case of Chara, I mean, he's aging, but he's still in great shape, still has that desire to play and win. We know if he did leave Boston, I can only see it happening to go with a team that he thought he'd have a shot to win another Stanley Cup. I don't see Chara making any other moves. I don't see him going to a team that's going through a rebuild, for example. So there's not a lot of options to me, even though there's lots of teams that expressed interest. We heard from his agent that as many as 20 teams reached out, and I totally understand why. I mean, if you had a chance to sign this guy who's going to be a Hall of Famer to a cheap contract for 1 year to help come in and be a mentor to your young blue liners, why wouldn't you do that? All that experience, he's got a Stanley Cup to his resume. Really, I can understand why you would want that. So in the case of the Lightning, adding that to your blue line who's already got guys like Victor Hedman, Mikhail Sergachev, you got McDonough back there that has got Chernak signed, like adding Chara into a role that he can play a third pair defenseman, maybe even be that 6-7 guy who can kind of maybe come out of the lineup once in a while to make sure he's fresh and ready for the playoffs, would not be a terrible thing at all. By no means do I have any kind of guarantees that they're having discussions, but there was previous rumors that I wanted to kind of bring back up here today and say, you know what, Tampa actually could do this. As much as we thought it was crazy before, but the other moves they've made now, suddenly it is a possibility. If he's willing to sign for around $1 million, 1.1, something to that effect, they could actually get it done. Now, of course, with the tax difference between the state of Florida and the state of Massachusetts, he could even accept less money to go there and still take home as much or more than he would have as well. So really, he could sign there for less than whatever he could get in Boston and not lose out from a financial standpoint either. So to me, I think that is a real possibility. We will see where things go, but the Lightning could also go to the route of a free agent, like I said. There's guys out there like Sami Vatanen, Ben Hutton. I'm not sure Vatanen's really going to sign that for that less amount of money, but you never know. He might have to at this point. There's not a lot of options left. You still have some other free agent defensemen out there as well. Being a veteran like a Ron Hainsey, for example, or a Brandon Manning, somebody who could come in and be that extra depth piece. So we'll see what the Lightning do, but with the previous interest, I can't help but wonder if that is revisited. And maybe that actual rumor could be something we actually end up seeing after all. Now, as I mentioned as well, I wanted to talk about the Montreal Canadiens. Of course, earlier today we reported on the Corey Perry signing. I think it was a great move by Marc Bergevin, a great addition. Something that was previously rumored that we had talked about earlier in the offseason and never happened until just now. But of course, Perry was weighing out his options. And to me, I think it's a great fit. Montreal's done a lot of great things here to kind of make themselves grittier, tougher to play against, and still having a fair bit of skill in solid defense and good goaltending. Like, to me, I think they're going to be a muchly improved team this year, going to be a force to be reckoned with in that Northern Canadian division. So we'll see how they go. But the problem is now is they almost have too many bodies, and they do find themselves with a small cap problem. As I talked about in the video earlier about the Corey Perry signing, doesn't mean that it's going to trigger another move 100%. But there is talk that obviously somebody's going to either have to be traded out or go through waivers. It's not something that they really need to panic over. They can take their time, decide how they're going to do this. They could even start camp first. There's not a big rush. But as I mentioned before, yesterday there was some talk about maybe Victor Mete's name being out there. Now we're hearing a guy like Jordan Weald could become expendable within that forward group as well. Based on everything, if you look at the full roster here, he would be the prime salary that they could cut to become cap compliant. If they can't find a trade for Wheel, he very well might find himself placed on waivers before the start of the season, which means that they'd be at risk to lose him anyway, and of course they wouldn't get anything in return. So I do think that as much as Montreal continues to add, they are going to have to now subtract one way or another to make themselves compliant, and I do think a small minor trade out of there to kind of shed a little bit of salary rather than risk losing them through the waiver wire is a real distinct possibility. And I think a guy like Wheel is a real prime candidate. And same thing like when it goes to Victor Mete. I do think Victor Mete's chances of sticking around are a little bit better, though, if I had to pick between the two. So let me know what you think the Habs are going to do. Are they going to make a small trade to become cap compliant? Do you see them putting maybe a player like Wheel through the waiver wire, of course, before camp is finished? Or how do you see them handling this? They do have to make some kind of a small move to be compliant before the season gets underway. So let me know your thoughts down below and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.